The call came at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing in the office kitchen, stirring honey into my second cup of Earl Grey, when my phone lit up with my sister's name. Melanie never calls before noon. Ever. Something in my chest tightened as I answered. She's gone, Erin. Her voice was flat, empty. Mom passed about 20 minutes ago. I remember setting my mug down with this strange, deliberate care. Like if I could just place it perfectly on the counter, everything else would somehow fall into place too. I'm with her now, Melanie continued. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful. She just stopped breathing. I didn't cry, didn't speak, just stood there watching the steam rise from my tea, thinking about how Mom would never again remind me that proper British tea needs milk, not honey. That annoying, endearing thing she always said. Erin, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. My voice sounded wrong. Far away. I'll book a flight. Today. I'll be there tonight. The kitchenette door swung open, and in walked Lloyd Palmer, VP of Business Development and the closest thing I had to a mentor at Archer Thompson Financial. I turned away, pressing the phone closer. Take care of everything there, I told Melanie. I'm coming home. Lloyd was watching me, eyebrows raised, as I hung up. I must have looked like hell because his usual smirk softened slightly. Everything okay? I opened my mouth to tell him, this man who'd championed me through 2 promotions, who'd told me I reminded him of his daughter, and my phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel Hargrove, CEO and founder. My actual boss. My office. Now, Lloyd glanced at my phone. Better not keep him waiting. He's been on a tear since the Tokyo numbers came in. I left my tea steaming on the counter. It would be cold by the time I returned. Cold like my mother's body, which was lying in a hospice bed 1,800 miles away while her oldest daughter walked into the dragon's lair. Before I get into what happened next, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Erin Caldwell, 32, Senior Investment Strategist at at Archer Thompson. For 8 years, I built financial models that helped millionaires become billionaires while my student loan payments ate half my monthly income. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'm the girl who graduated top of her class and still had to bring coffee to meetings for 6 months before anyone bothered learning my name. The one who worked Christmas Eve while my colleagues were with their families because you don't have kids, so what's the big deal? The woman who wore the same 3 professional outfits in rotation because looking too feminine meant not being taken seriously, but looking too masculine meant being labeled difficult. And I was the daughter who moved across the country from her dying mother because a job opportunity was too good to pass up. The daughter who promised to visit every month but averaged every 3 instead. The daughter who said, there'll be time later, until suddenly, there wasn't. If you're still with me, maybe hit subscribe. I don't know if I'll ever make another video after this one, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, Daniel Hargrove's office occupied the northeast corner of the 47th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art that probably cost more than my parents' house, and a desk large enough to land a small aircraft. He didn't look up when I entered, just kept scrolling through his phone. The Huang team from Singapore lands at noon, he said, still not looking at me. Conrad is bringing them straight here from the airport. I stood there, my mind struggling to shift from, my mother is dead, to Singapore client arriving. The Huang deal? I finally managed. That's scheduled for Thursday. Daniel looked up then, his steel gray eyes narrowing. Their CEO had a scheduling conflict. They moved it up. Conrad called me last night. Conrad, the account manager who consistently took credit for my work, who had my number but hadn't bothered to let me know about this massive change. I need to book a flight, I heard myself saying. My mother just died. I have to go home today. There was a moment, just a flicker, where something like sympathy crossed Daniel's face. Then it was gone, replaced by the expression I'd seen countless times in board meetings. Calculation. That's unfortunate timing, he said, setting his phone down. But the Huang specifically requested the strategist who built the acquisition model. That's you. My mother just died, I repeated, louder this time, as if volume would make it penetrate. He leaned back in his chair. Erin, I understand this is difficult, but we're talking about a 3 million commission. This is the deal that puts us in the Asia market. You've worked on this for months. I can present remotely. Or Conrad can. The Huangs are old school. They don't trust what they can't see face to face. He sighed, adopting what I now recognize as his practiced, compassionate leader voice. Take tomorrow off. Once we sign the deal today, you can have bereavement leave, but miss this meeting and there won't be a job to come back to. I stood there, feeling something crack inside me. Not just break crack, like a foundation with too much pressure bearing down. 8 years of pressure. 8 years of just this one more thing, Erin, and the team needs you, Erin, and no one understands these models like you do, Erin. My mother is dead, I said for the third time. And I'm sorry for your loss, Daniel replied, already looking back at his phone. But the Singapore client lands in 2 hours. Make your choice. Have you ever had that moment where your body seems to know what to do before your brain catches up? I walked out of Daniel's office, past my desk with its sad little plant that I watered faithfully every Monday, past Lloyd, who called something after me that I didn't hear, and into the main conference room. It was empty except for Zoe from marketing, setting up her presentation materials for the Singapore meeting. Hey, she said, glancing up. You look like you've seen a ghost. My mom died this morning, I told her. The first time I'd said it aloud to someone who wasn't family or Daniel. Zoe's hands froze mid-motion. Oh my God, Erin. I'm so sorry. Daniel said if I missed the Huang meeting to go to her funeral, I'm fired. Her eyes widened, mascara framed, and suddenly angry on my behalf. That's illegal. That has to be illegal. Maybe it was. I didn't know. What I did know was that in the high-stakes world of financial services, people disappeared all the time for crossing the wrong person. Not fired officially, just gradually sidelined until they got the message and left. I need your laptop, I said, the plan forming as I spoke. And I need you to go to my desk and get the blue thumb drive in my top drawer. What are you going to do? Zoe asked, already unplugging her MacBook. I looked around the conference room at the polished table where I'd sat through hundreds of meetings, at the pristine whiteboard where I'd drawn financial projections that made men like Daniel millions while I scraped by in my studio apartment. I'm going to do both, I said. I'm going to bury my mother and close this deal. Zoe handed me her laptop. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. And that's when I told her exactly what I needed. The next 2 hours were a blur of purposeful activity. I pulled up the Huang acquisition model, my masterpiece of financial engineering that I'd spent 6 months building. I knew every variable, every formula, every assumption. I'd stress-tested it against market crashes, political upheaval, and currency fluctuations. What Daniel didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd built a shadow version. A version where the numbers still worked, still showed the same beautiful returns, but with one crucial difference. It protected the Taiwanese manufacturing workers that the Huangs were planning to replace with automation. My mother had been a union organizer for 30 years, the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants who'd worked in factories their whole lives. She'd raised me on stories of exploitation, of people treated like machinery to be upgraded or discarded. The numbers on the page are always people, Erin. She'd told me when I got my first finance job. Never forget that. I had forgotten, or at least I'd gotten good at pretending I had. I called Melanie back. I can't get a flight until tonight, I told her, fingers flying over the keyboard. Start planning the service for Friday. I'll handle Mom's favorite flowers. White peonies, Melanie said automatically. And the Navy hymn. Eternal Father, strong to save, I confirmed. It had been playing when Mom met Dad at a USO dance in 1983. I'll be there tonight, I promise. Next, I called Conrad, who was escorting the Huang team from the airport. Hey, slight change of plan, I said, injecting casual authority into my voice. Daniel wants us to use the Holden Conference Center for the meeting. More impressive for the clients. Can you bring them there instead? Since when? Conrad asked suspiciously. Since the building management just informed us they're testing the fire suppression system in our conference room today. You want to explain deal points while we're all getting sprayed with water? He didn't question it further. At 11:45, I walked into Daniel's office without knocking. He was straightening his tie in the reflection of his phone. "I've moved the meeting to the Holden Center," I told him. "Building maintenance issue." He frowned. "Why wasn't I informed?" "I'm informing you now. Car's waiting downstairs. I've already sent Zoe ahead to set up." For a moment, I thought he might question it, but Daniel Hargrove had a pathological fear of appearing uninformed. He nodded like this, had been the plan all along, and grabbed his suit jacket. As we rode the elevator down, I looked at this man who'd just forced me to choose between my mother's funeral and my career, and I felt nothing. The anger would come later. In that moment, there was just clarity. We stepped outside into the October sunshine. I pointed to the Blacktown car idling at the curb. "That's our ride," I said. "I just need to grab something from my car. Meet you there in 30 seconds. Daniel nodded, heading toward the town car while checking his phone messages. I watched him get in, watched the car pull away from the curb, and I whispered the 7 words that changed everything. "He's not going to the right meeting." Then I turned, walked to the parking garage, got in my own car, and drove to the airport, leaving Daniel Hargrove headed to an empty conference room across town, while the 3 million Singapore clients arrived at our office building, where Zoe was waiting to greet them and usher them into a presentation that would change everything. But that was just the beginning of what I had planned. I want to be clear about something. I'm not one of those people who plans elaborate revenge fantasies. At least, I never thought I was. What was happening wasn't even about revenge yet. It was about survival, about refusing an impossible choice. As I merged onto the highway toward JFK, I called Zoe. "They're here," she said without preamble. "All 7 of them. The Huangs, their legal team, their financial advisors. And Conrad?" Calling Daniel every 30 seconds, getting more panicked each time. Daniel's phone is going straight to voicemail. That's because Daniel's phone was in airplane mode. I'd reached over and toggled the switch while pointing out something on the contract during the car ride. A small thing. Something he wouldn't notice for at least an hour in the confusion. "Give them the good coffee," I instructed. "The Ethiopian beans we hide from marketing. And put them in the East Conference Room, the one with the view of the bridge." "Already done." Zoe paused. "What about your presentation?" I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. "Starting in exactly 26 minutes. Have you set up the video link?" "Yes, but Erin, are you sure about this?" "No. I wasn't sure about anything except that my mother was dead, and I wasn't going to miss saying goodbye because a man in an expensive suit thought his money was more important than my grief." "Just make sure everyone's in their seats at 12:30 sharp," I said. "And Zoe? Thank you." The airport terminal was a blur of bodies and noise. I found a family bathroom, one of those single-occupancy rooms, locked myself in, and pulled out my laptop. Using my phone as a hotspot, I logged into the secure video conferencing platform we used for client meetings. 12:28 p.m. I freshened my makeup with shaking hands, smoothed my hair, and straightened my blouse. There, in a bathroom stall at JFK, I prepared to give the most important presentation of my career. At exactly 12:30, I clicked, "Join meeting." The screen filled with faces around our conference table. The Huang family patriarch, Winston Huang, sat at the center, flanked by his son and daughter. Their advisors lined the sides. Zoe sat at the far end, giving me a subtle thumbs up out of view of the others. "Good afternoon from New York," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm Erin Caldwell, Senior Investment Strategist for Archer Thompson Financial. I apologize for the virtual presentation. I've been called away for a family emergency." Winston Huang frowned slightly. At 78, he was old school in every sense, famously preferring face-to-face meetings. "However," I continued, "I believe what I'm about to show you will be worth the unconventional format." For the next 45 minutes, I walked them through my alternative acquisition model. Not the one that had been approved by Daniel, the one that protected the Taiwanese workers while still delivering the 18% return the Huangs wanted. I showed them how automation wasn't necessary for profitability, how keeping the experienced workforce would actually reduce quality control issues that plagued new automated systems. This approach gives you something more valuable than a marginal increase in short-term profits, I told them. It gives you stability, institutional knowledge, and, most importantly, it gives you face. Winston Huang's eyebrows rose slightly at my use of the Chinese concept. The current labor protests in Taiwan have international attention, I continued. By retaining the workforce, you position yourselves as responsible corporate leaders rather than opportunistic cost cutters. The goodwill alone will open doors throughout the region that might otherwise remain closed. I took a breath, aware I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. My mother passed away this morning, I said, my voice finally betraying a tremor. She was the daughter of Taiwanese factory workers who came to America for a better life. She spent her career fighting for worker protections, and as I prepared this presentation for you, I kept asking myself what she would think of my work. The conference room was utterly silent. I could see Winston Huang studying me through the screen. Mr. Huang, I believe this alternative approach honors my mother's legacy while still meeting your financial objectives. It's not just good ethics, it's good business. There was a long moment of silence. Then Winston Huang leaned forward. Where is Mr. Hargrove? He asked. Unavoidably detained, I replied smoothly, but I'm authorized to negotiate the final terms. This was, of course, a complete lie. Winston exchanged looks with his son, then his daughter. Some unspoken family communication passed between them. Ms. Caldwell, he said finally, my condolences on your loss. My own mother worked in a textile factory for 40 years. Her hands were never without calluses. He paused. We will proceed with your model. I felt a rush of something, not quite victory, not quite vindication, something more complicated. Thank you, Mr. Huang. Zoe will provide the contracts reflecting these terms. As I prepared to sign off, Winston Huang added, and Ms. Caldwell, go bury your mother with honor. Business can wait. I ended the call, closed the laptop, and finally allowed myself to cry. My flight was boarding by the time Daniel figured out what had happened. My phone exploded with notifications, first texts, then voicemails, each more apoplectic than the last. Where the hell are you? The clients are here. Not at Holden. Call me immediately. And finally, you're fired. Don't bother coming back. I turned off my phone as I settled into my seat. 6 hours to fly across the country. 6 hours to process what I'd just done. I'd blown up my career. 8 years at the company, gone. My reputation in the industry, possibly unsalvageable. The mortgage on my apartment that I could barely afford, even with my senior strategist salary. What would happen to that now? But I'd also done something else. I'd honored my mother in the only way I knew how. I'd used my financial models, the skills she'd always regarded with a mixture of pride and suspicion, to protect people like her parents, like the people she'd spent her life advocating for. Somewhere over Ohio, I realized I was smiling. The next 3 days passed in the surreal fog of grief and funeral arrangements. Melanie and I sorted through Mom's modest belongings in her assisted living apartment. We argued about the eulogy, cried over her collection of refrigerator magnets from places she'd visited, and drank cheap wine directly from the bottle like we used to in college. She kept everything you ever sent her. Melanie told me, pointing to a shoebox filled with postcards and trinkets from my business trips, even the stupid stress ball from that conference in Dallas. The guilt crashed over me, all the visits I'd canceled, the calls I'd cut short because of work emergencies. The last time I'd seen Mom, 2 months earlier, when I'd spent half the visit on email because of a critical client situation. She was proud of you, Melanie said, reading my thoughts the way only siblings can. She didn't always understand what you did, but she was proud. The funeral was on Friday, just as we'd planned. White peonies everywhere. Eternal Father, Strong to Save, played by Mom's friend from church who'd been a professional pianist in her younger days. I delivered the eulogy without breaking down, which would have disappointed Mom, who always said a good cry was cleansing for the soul. I didn't check my work email once. I didn't return Daniel's calls. I existed fully in the moment of saying goodbye to the woman who had taught me that principles matter more than profit. It wasn't until Saturday, the day after the funeral, that I finally opened my laptop and logged into my work account, expecting to find it deactivated. Instead, I found an email from Lena Huang, Winston Huang's daughter and chief operating officer of Huang Enterprises. It had been sent 4 hours after my bathroom stall presentation. Ms. Caldwell, the contracts have been signed using your revised model. My father was impressed by both your financial acumen and your ethical stance. We value partners who understand that longevity in business requires more than quarterly profits. We were disturbed to learn from your colleague Zoe that you presented this model without Mr. Hargrove's approval, and that you have potentially sacrificed your position to honor your mother while still serving our interests. Should you find yourself seeking new opportunities after your bereavement, Huang Enterprises would welcome a conversation. With respect and condolences, Lena Huang. There was a second email, this one from Lloyd Palmer, sent just yesterday. Erin, the board emergency meeting just concluded. I don't know what the hell you did, but the Huangs not only signed, they increased their initial investment by 30% based on your model. They also made it clear they would only work with you going forward. Daniel is, well, apoplectic doesn't begin to cover it, but the board is ecstatic about breaking into the Asian market. No one's going to fire the person who just landed the biggest client in company history. Take the time you need for your family. Your job will be here when you return, though things may look a bit different. Daniel's position is under review. I'm sorry about your mother. Lloyd. I read both emails twice, then closed my laptop and walked outside to the porch swing where Mom used to sit in the evenings. The California sunset painted the sky in colors she would have appreciated. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Company all-hands meeting announced for Monday. Rumor mill says Daniel's out, restructuring coming. You're the hero of the 38th floor. When are you coming back? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I thought about what coming back would mean. Back to a company that had forced me to choose between basic human decency and my livelihood. Back to a culture that saw family emergencies as inconvenient scheduling conflicts. I thought about Lena Huang's email, about possibilities I hadn't considered before, about my mother, who taught me that sometimes you have to blow things up to build something better. I did go back, but only for one day, just long enough to clean out my desk, download my contact list, and attend the all-hands meeting where Lloyd announced that Daniel had decided to pursue other opportunities, corporate speak for, was forced to resign in disgrace. Lloyd also announced my promotion to Vice President of Strategic Development, a position created specifically for me. I declined it publicly, in front of the entire company. I appreciate the recognition, I said, standing at the front of the room filled with shocked faces. But recent events have made me reevaluate what I want from my career and my life. I've accepted a position elsewhere. The room erupted in whispers. Lloyd looked like I'd slapped him. With the Huangs? He asked, microphone still on. No, I said. I'm starting my own firm. Ethical investment strategies for the new economy. I paused, looking around at the faces of colleagues who had been my whole world for 8 years. My mother taught me that the numbers on the page are always people. I forgot that for a while. I won't forget it again. 2 weeks later, Caldwell Strategic Advisors opened its doors, funded in part by investment from Huang Enterprises, in part by my own savings, and in part by the surprisingly generous severance package Archer Thompson provided when they realized I was taking the Huangs with me. My first hire was Zoe. My second was my sister Melanie, who left her marketing job to handle our operations. My third was Lloyd Palmer, who resigned from Archer Thompson after 30 years when he realized which way the wind was blowing. It's been 18 months now. We're small but growing. We specialize in acquisition models that prioritize worker retention and ethical supply chains while still delivering competitive returns. We have a waiting list of clients. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Daniel hadn't given me that impossible choice on the worst morning of my life. If he'd shown a shred of basic human compassion, he probably would have kept his job. I probably would have kept mine. The Huangs would have gotten their original model. Hundreds of Taiwanese workers would have lost their livelihoods, and I would have continued being a small cog in a soulless machine. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become turning points we never could have anticipated. So that's my story. Not exactly the revenge saga you might have expected from the title, I guess. I didn't destroy Daniel out of spite. I just chose not to sacrifice myself or my values for his profit margin. The fact that he imploded as a result was just karma doing its thing. My mom would say it was justice, that the universe has a way of balancing the scales. I keep her picture on my desk now, right next to the stress ball from that conference in Dallas. Sometimes when I'm building financial models late at night, I swear I can hear her reminding me, the numbers on the page are always people, Erin. I don't forget anymore. If you've stuck with me through this whole story, thank you. Maybe hit like or subscribe if you want to hear more. Though honestly, I don't know if I'll make another video. This was more therapy than content creation. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from my experience, it's this. When someone forces you to make an impossible choice, sometimes the best option is to reject their terms entirely and create your own path. It's terrifying. It's risky. But on the other side might be something better than you ever imagined. And if you're dealing with grief and impossible choices of your own right now, I see you. It gets, well, not easier exactly, but different, more manageable. The waves don't stop coming, but you learn to swim. Anyway, thanks for listening to my 2 a.m. confessional. I should probably try to sleep now.